What about lions?
Some of them maybe are on the spectrum.
Especially if they're attached to a JV.
Especially if they're attached to you. Yeah, absolutely. Move. Just so I can read the crowd, are there any healthcare professionals here at all, or are you all just real people? Okay, sort of, kind of like.
Back to the healthcare professional being a real person.
I'm a healthcare professional. I never considered that part real. Okay. My name is Bethann Sivitier. I'm a registered nurse because everybody has to do something. But I'm also autistic and I have ADHD. I was diagnosed before it was possible to be diagnosed because I was female and over the age of 18. So they said, you're autistic, go away, cope. So I'm going to start the talk now. Nikwiache, atikana. Atikana? That's Algonquin for stand up, please. And then, don't you hear me? Now, the reason I said that is because I know lots of people who would understand that. But none of you did. So who's wrong? Me for saying something you can't understand, or you for not understanding it? That encapsulates autism. Who's the one in the wrong? The one who doesn't understand, or the one who's not understood? Today I'm going to talk to you about autism, what the spectrum is, what that means for people. I'm going to talk to you about masking and how detrimental that is, why we mask, and why it's important for healthcare providers to know who we are as autistic people so that they can treat us fairly and reasonably. If you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt. When I rolled my dice today, it came up as chaotic good, so you can please feel free to do whatever you like. Okay? The spectrum, some people believe, is linear. They believe that there's high functioning at this end and low functioning at this end, right? But that's not what the spectrum is. It's a lot more like, do any of you remember when Wilkie's had pick and mix? And you go and you take 3 of these, 6 of these, 200 of those. That's what the spectrum really is. We all have strengths and weaknesses. Some of those strengths are really strong. Some of those weaknesses are really weak. That's why high functioning doesn't work. Because somebody can be high functioning 90% of the time, and that other 10%, they're sitting there like a bowl of jelly, trapped, not knowing what to do. Low functioning doesn't work either, because it labels people as incapable. When the real truth is, the incapability is in people trying to understand that person. Now, I recently was hospitalized. So what I want to talk to you about is what happened to me there. But first, I want to ask you, please don't put your hands up. How many of you here are liars? Okay? The monkey's a liar, okay. I was going to say something about spanking, but then I thought, no, that's completely the wrong thing to say. Okay. So, how many of you in the past week have said, I'll be back in a minute? Or when asked how you are, you say, I'm fine. Were you telling the truth? We in society are programmed to social dishonesty. And it messes up the heads of people with autism because we just don't get it. Somebody said to me once, put your socks up. And I went, I'm not wearing socks. When I was in the hospital, a nurse said to me, I'll be back in 5 minutes. 5 minutes to me is 300 seconds. I can guarantee you that is not what she meant. Who do you think got into trouble when I said, you said 5 minutes and you didn't come back? Who's the unreasonable one? Me. Because I expected her to tell the truth. And that's where autistic people get into trouble. We expect other people to do what they say and say what they do. Because we can't tell by the look on their face that what they meant is I'm leaving at 3 o'clock and I am so out of here before I come into you. Okay? We can't read that on their face. We don't see it. We don't see when we're talking to somebody that their brain's going, oh, please shut up about dinosaurs. I have so had enough about dinosaurs. I was talking to Jamie then, wasn't I? Yeah. But the reality is we talk about those things because what we're really saying is, please help me feel like I belong. Please help me feel safe. Please help me feel comfortable. Please say you understand. A lot of people will talk about disability awareness, autism awareness. We don't need awareness. We need acceptance. If you know somebody who's autistic, they're going to be an eccentric. Cope. If you're neurotypical, right, then you've got all kinds of strengths and skills. You should be able to manage coping. And that's important because our brains are formed in utero to function a certain way. Asking me, like I was talking to somebody on Quora, and they said, well, why don't you just learn how to do that? And I said, well, why don't you just decide to change your gender? Or the color of your eyes? Or tomorrow, change your dominant hand? Because my autism is as inherent to me as your gender, your dominant hand, your native language. When caring for people with autism, those things must be recognized, especially under stress. You cannot expect the disabled person to change. And when I say disabled by autism, I mean the social model of disabled by autism. The social model says, where there is access and acceptance, there is no disability. And the reality is, if we lived in a world where it was completely okay to be who we are, nobody would know the difference. Because we would wander off and do the things we're good at, and you would wander off and do the things you're good at, and you wouldn't get upset at us because we don't want to go to the Christmas party. And that's the reality of it, but we don't live in that world yet. We have to start to change it. And we who understand it have to be the ones who change it. We have to say, yeah, I'm autistic, big deal. You're right, I'm not very good at social cues and I can sound really rude sometimes, but if you want somebody to make sense out of a 1,200-page policy document, I'm your girl. And I'll think it's the best thing I've ever done. Oh, so exciting. While everybody else goes, people actually read those? You know? The thing is we as autistic people, we actually do see things differently because of our brain structure. We have shorter fibers in the memory centers of our brain, but they're much more densely packed. So when we find something we're interested in, that's what we go for. People who are neurotypical have longer fibers in their brain and connecting the different regions more easily. So our brain kind of works as a bunch of subsets instead of one piece. That's why we get overly focused on things. It's also why we have sensory problems. Those sensory problems are not by choice. We don't say, I think I'm going to get khaki about the fact that there's fluorescent lighting. We feel like it's burning through our eyes. I I think 14 before I put my feet on grass, because just the idea of having grass through my toes, I'm not doing that. I can't. It was frustrating because people say, oh, you have to be difficult, don't you? See, now I would go, yes, absolutely, I have to be difficult. I have a neurotypical partner. I often go to him and say, I need a neurotypical translation, please. I did this, this happened, what happened? And he'll go, oh, this, that. And I go, why did they think I was rude? He'll say, well, your voice can sound rude or intimidating because you're loud, you're direct, and you're the idiot going, the emperor has no clothes on, when that's not what people want to hear. And I go, okay, thank you. And I wander up and don't change. In care environments, what we need, for any of you who are on the spectrum, write out in advance what you need, what food choices you want, how you prefer to dress, to wash, to transfer, what's important to you for lighting. Do you have a special blanket? Do you have special slippers? I'm going to have several ladies nodding at me, but do you have special underwear that you wear when you don't feel good? Because it just makes you feel better. And when people go, oh no, you should wear these ones, you go, hands off my pants, lady. Right? I said that to a nurse once, and she went, ooh, testy, are we? I said, ooh, still standing, aren't we? They did yell at me for that, but I lived. So, in any care plan, you are the ones that need to lead it. And you have to have the courage and the strength to say, no, that does not work for me. And staff have to be able to cope, that they have to tell you the truth. If they're going to be back in 5 minutes, but what they really mean is sometime before lunch, then they need to say, I don't know when I'll be back, but it will be sometime before lunch. Because that honesty makes disabled people like me, autistic people like me, feel safe. Interesting quirk as well. Numbers of us here are not beige people, are we? We're pink and purple and bright green and all of those kinds of, that's different. That is actually an autistic trait. The tendency of autistic people is to be fluid in most things except their adherence to rules and rituals, but they will have fluid identities because you have to change depending on what environment you're in. You have to mask, you have to camouflage, so you have to be prepared to be different. But we also desperately, like everyone else, wants to be ourselves. So we carry monkeys, and we have purple hair, and we wear clothes that people go, where did you get that from? And we go, Timu! Okay? Because that's where a lot of outrageous clothing comes from, she says, as she tightens her shirt. But they also have fluid gender identities. That is very common. Up to 80% of autistic people have fluid gender identities. So when you make an environment safe for autistic people, you're making it more safe for people with fluid genders. The other thing about autism that is really important to remember is a meltdown is not a temper tantrum. There are two things that happen when the autistic person has just had enough. It's kind of like we have a 30-minute battery for dealing with stress. Okay? Once that battery runs out, our brain goes, I don't want to be here anymore. And the first thing the brain does is knock over a bunch of boxes on its way out, which is evidenced by us stomping our feet, crying, yelling, throwing things, because we're just so overwhelmed that we just can't do it. When I was in hospital, I told them, I'm going to melt down if you keep doing this. I'm going to melt down if you keep doing this. I'm going to melt down. I wish I'd had it as a recording. I could have just pushed the button. So what happens when I finally melted down? They call my husband and say, that's a problem. How? I told them, but they didn't listen. So my husband had to come in and talk to them and talk to me and convince me to put up with them. But I also in the past have been in a shutdown. And a shutdown is when the autistic person goes, that's it. The body can stay, but the brain's gone. We'll be back later when it's safe. And the person cannot speak. They cannot interact. They are robotic. And it's because the brain says, I am so afraid that I can't do anything. They won't eat, they won't wash, they may not even toilet, because they are stuck. And what they need is if somebody in your care or somebody you care about is in a meltdown or a shutdown, the first thing you need to say is, tell me what you're feeling. Tell me what you're thinking. How can I help? I want to help. It's okay. It's okay. You're not in trouble. It's safe. Reduce sensory input. Make it quiet, dark, simple, peaceful. And that helps the person find their way. Usually they need a special person. Somebody they trust. Somebody they love. Somebody they know understands to come mediate. But in hospitals, you don't always have that. Some hospitals have a vulnerable people's team who works Monday through Friday, 7 to 3. Very useful. Okay? So what you need to do is get as much help from that team as you can so that you've got the care plans in place. So when you make the complaint later, you can show them how they didn't follow what they were supposed to do. Because that's what we need to do to start to teach them. Because in reality, it's exhausting to mask. Masking and camouflage is painful. Those of you who are neurotypical, imagine if all day, every day, you had to pretend to be someone else. Because you know that if you showed who you really were, people would reject you. Can you imagine how much emotional effort that takes? The way that we do it is we look at people who don't get into trouble, people who are successful, and we say, okay, I'm going to pretend to be him. He knows what he's doing. You do know what you're doing, right? Okay. So I'm going to pretend to be him. I'm going to do what he does, act like he does, and that's what masking is. We also get it from people on TV, which isn't always successful because you cannot mask Spider-Man successfully. Okay? Sorry for the disappointment, Beth. You know, but I know, but you can pretend. That's all right. But the big thing is we have to be ourselves. And we shouldn't have to be exhausted. Because the more exhausted you are, the lower your battery runs. The lower your battery runs, the more likely you are to have a meltdown. The more likely you have a meltdown, the more likely you are to feel so humiliated and embarrassed that you never walk in front of those people ever again because they don't get it. Does that all make sense to you? Does anybody want to ask anything?
When Isaac goes into shutdown, it goes non-verbal. So to ask him questions.
Thank you.
When Isaac goes into shutdown, goes non-verbal.
So for me to say, how are you feeling? Where are you? What's happening? How they struggle with communication, and they also struggle with communication on meltdowns as well.
Sometimes it depends on the person, but when he's feeling well, say to him, what's the best way for me to communicate with you when you're in a meltdown? And he'll say, well, colors help. So, or it might be, I want you to make monkey talk to me because I feel safe with monkey. So if you say, hello, I care about you and it's safe, using monkey, maybe that hits the right place in his brain. Somebody else might use push buttons, or a chart, or a flashcard.
That one is telling to go away.
If you're being nonverbal, you're not allowed to do that.
There is methods of sign language.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sign language helps. There is a universal symbol for go away, which I won't hold up with all those fingers. But in advance, talk to the person and say, what do you need when this happens? What do you need to prevent this from happening? If this does happen, what should I do? Because like for me, if I start to melt down, the last thing in the world I want is somebody going, you okay? You okay? You okay? Because I'm like, no, and you won't be either soon. You know, just go away, leave me in a dark, cool, quiet place, and then I'll stop plotting murder, and it will all get much easier for everyone.
What's the difference between autism spectrum disorder?
Okay, just terms. It's kind of like what's the difference between chicken and Kentucky Fried Chicken? Chicken is real meat and I love Kentucky Fried Chicken. I don't know why, but really what it is there used to be several different disorders, but they were designed with a complete misunderstanding that people with autism were so inward looking that they were practically sociopaths, that it was schizophrenia, that only boys got it. They thought Asperger was a completely different disorder. And eventually when they dumped it all out, they realized that they're actually all the same things in varying degrees. So this autistic spectrum condition, which means, hey, that's just the way I am. This autistic spectrum disorder, which is just a different way of saying autistic spectrum condition with a different word that somebody might not like. There's autism, which is autistic spectrum disorder shorthand. There's Asperger, which doesn't exist anymore. And I'm just as glad because he wasn't a very nice man and I don't want to say his name. Okay?
He's still on my paperwork.
Well, he doesn't have to be. Just start designating yourself as ASD whatever and just, you say, I don't want to be called that. I want to be ASD1. And they have to let you do that. Never has there been in the books high functioning or low, those terms have never existed diagnostically. They're not there. Because they're not reality. Does that help? Anybody else want to ask anything?
As a carer, sorry, me again.
Yeah?
As a carer, sorry.
You're not sorry. You don't
Oh, not
even
really.
look sorry. No,
To be fair, you don't even work in care anymore. I'm just approving you keep on.
Shush you.
he's going to be in trouble when he goes home.
One of us.
I could be telling Isaac something, and Isaac will go, huh? And I'll repeat myself, and he'll go, huh? And then I start getting upset, and then he'll take it on the third one, but actually he's taking it on the first one. And I, as supporting Isaac, I find that extremely annoying, because instead of twigging, actually taking it on the first one, I don't need to repeat myself. Have you got any tips for that?
Yeah, very likely this handsome young man has something that's called oppositional personality disorder. It's very common amongst people in autism, and we just go, you don't want to. You told me to do it, which means now, although I wanted to do it before you told me to do it, now it's the last thing in the known universe that I want to do, because it's a bit of a panic. And that's what it is internally the autistic person saying, oh my goodness gracious, I've got expectations to live up to now. And they're not sure they're going to be able to do that. So one of the things that you can do is you say to Isaac, Isaac, we are going to go out in 20 minutes. If you are not ready, you have to stay home on your own. It's going to take us 10 minutes to get you ready, so you need to leave me 10 minutes. You let me know when you're ready, and then go away and let him decide. And if he's not ready, leave him at home. But give him the option. Let him make the choice freely so that you're not telling him to do it. Now with some things, like the house is on fire, you have to get out now. That's not quite so easy. But then what you do is you say, join me outside. Do you see the difference in the way it's phrased? You're not going like this, you're going like this. And with oppositional personality disorder, or oppositional defiance, is the other name for it, that's the easiest way, is don't tell, ask. Because the person is less likely. But also afterwards, it's always okay to say, I found that really difficult earlier and really disrespectful when I asked you 5 times. How can we make it better for next time? And he might go, not a clue. But it's important for you as a carer to know that you are respected enough that you can say what you need to say, but also that he's got enough integrity to you that you know you can talk to him and say, this didn't work out well, that you don't go, oh, he's autistic, he can't handle it. You have to respect that he can and help him do that. Because we're actually very strong, very resilient people when people let us.
I know for a fact that I spent most of my life growing up masking. So when I was growing up, I'll wait for the microphone gets here because this is.
You know, there's a stand over here instead.
Yeah, just stand next to them because they're not going to be quiet. There's one in every crowd. We got 2. Okay.
It comes with a monkey.
Comes with the monkey.
He
Yeah,
can't say
blame
anything,
the
so I've got to
monkey.
speak for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, but back to the monkey. My mum would absolutely gawk at the thought that I'm out here with the monkey next to me. I was raised with the fact of I was non-verbal when I was younger, and I would go when I wanted something, and it was use your words. Or she would deliberately, her and my father would deliberately take me to restaurants, even though after the meal I would throw up absolutely everywhere. Sorry, I should have triggered that.
Trigger warning. A little bit late, but there you go.
Late than never. Better late than never. But yeah. How is it best to work out the fine balance? Because there's always going to be some people that you need to put a little mask on for, because they'll never understand, but you've got to play nice because they're family and stuff like that, or they're neurotypical and they struggle with this kind of things. I know I struggle with things with Sai as well.
You go back to that social dishonesty thing, and almost like it's a role play game, you convert your mask to something that fits a little better. So that you learn, how are you? I'm fine. Everything all right? Yes, it is. And you just kind of have to learn that those are the pass phrases. And you mask when you need to, and when you feel the stress build up, you go someplace like in the toilet, in a cupboard, in the photocopier room, someplace where you can go, oh, these neurotypical people are driving me nuts. And then you go back out and go, hello. Okay? Because that's what you need to do to feel sane. And if you're in a care environment, you need to say to people, sometimes I just need a moment to myself, okay? And let them know that there are times when you can't deal with dealing with. Does that make sense to all of you? Okay, today I promised to do several things. I promised to talk to you about what the spectrum means. Have I done that? I promised to talk to you about what masking and camouflage is. Have I done that for you? I promised to talk about what autism really is. Have I done that for you? And I promised to talk about what you need to do in care environments, either as a carer or as a person being cared for, in order to feel safe. Have I helped you to do that? Is there anything else you'd like to ask me?
Excuse me.
And then I'll hang out here if anybody wants to talk to me after, because we have left the best for the absolute last. One more question, and we're gonna, because it's okay, because it closes at 4, so nobody's coming after me, right? Are you going anywhere? No? Okay.
My question is, what's the information on the prevalence of undiagnosed autism in care situations and the problems this causes and how to deal with it?
It is massively underdiagnosed, especially in people, I'm sorry, I'm going to use the American term because I can't remember off the top of my head what the correct British term is. People of color, people from minority backgrounds, and women, people whose primary language is not English. These people are grossly underdiagnosed and may in fact be diagnosed with a different mental illness that actually is autism. Because it can take up to 5 years to be diagnosed here, and it is mainly white men or white males who go forward for diagnosis, so they're the ones most commonly diagnosed. Autism is a comorbidity, or coexists often with other problems. Very, very common. Deafness. There is a significant overlap between deaf people and autism. Well, you never notice their autism because you can't understand a word they're saying anyway. And then those people are doubly disadvantaged because they can't even tell you what they need. Does that answer your question? So, knowing a little bit about autism, you can always go, I think we should get them assessed if you think that somebody does. Somebody else?
Right. The spectrum.
The spectrum.
Is it segmented?
Is it segmented?
And if it is segmented, is it identifiable and named?
Okay, I'd ask them for a flip chart, but it was going to fall over and nobody was going to be able to see it, so I put it on the floor. Because I don't like to use PowerPoint, because I'd rather you listen to me and talk to me than read. The spectrum looks like this, okay? You have language in, language out. Physical movement. I'm going to run out of pie wedges, I think. Physical movement. Sensory issues. Processing issues with memory. Social issues. Different people will plot different places on this. So, somebody might do pretty well in social things, but not very well with communication in, so they might not understand well. They might be pretty good at communication out. They might be a total klutz, because dyspraxia, the inability to, dyspraxia is the ability to trip here when the object's down there. Okay?
Your example just dropped the monkey.
Okay, yeah. The monkey is in such trouble. Okay? So they plot different places, and the spectrum looks like that. So here's where, this is why high functioning and low functioning doesn't work. Because here, they are high functioning. Here, they're not. So it depends on the circumstance. That's how the spectrum works, like pick and mix. Like I can stand up here and talk to you guys. If there's just one of you, I'm hiding under my chair. It's the way language and that works. Okay? Anything else before I end? I want to really thank you. I'm going to, what do you want, honey? I can't hear you.
Can't hear you. Get by.
Can somebody who's loud and obnoxious help her?
We know someone who over at least 30 years has been
Now
diagnosed with
thinking it's
schizophrenia.
autism instead of schizophrenia.
Many times, especially women, were diagnosed with schizophrenia instead of autism because they thought that women couldn't be autistic. So there's a lot of that. But narcissism, schizophrenia, psychopathy, those are things that many times, unstable personality disorder, emotionally unstable personality disorder, these are all things that autistic people are commonly branded with until they're properly diagnosed.
Would you recommend that person retrying to get a autism diagnosis?
Yes. To speak to somebody who knows what they're doing and get a referral, get their GP to refer them under the right to choose. I'm going to give you my email address and then I'm going to shut up and go away. Or if you want, you can just get one of my cards up here. Okay? But my name is Bethann, B-E-T-H-A-N-N, just like in the program. Sivitier, just like in the program. Dot between the two, bethann.sivitier@gmail.com. If you want to ask anything, please feel free. My email address is exactly like my name, Bethann, but with a dot in the middle. Thank you very much for being here. Thanks for listening. I hope you find it useful, and please thank the interpreter.